Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. He didn't have to look for the number. He remembered it. He walked from row to row, head down, searching. It's been a long time since he was last here. The evening air was not cold. The day was wonderful. There was no rain, which makes it a beautiful day in England, and the temperature was unseasonably warm. It was spring, and when he walked through the cemetery, he saw crocuses and daffodils. The colors began to return after the dull grays and browns of winter. He looked around and saw that there were several people in the cemetery. He was not alone there, but he saw nothing that could bother him and returned to his search. It took a while, but he found her grave. She was buried next to his father, reunited after his death. She would have liked that. He smiled to himself as he came closer. His father died when he was a teenager. The family had a hard time, and he lacked a male presence in his life. His mother wasn't fooling around. She was grieving and living her life. They had a good marriage, and his early years were everything he could have dreamed of. They didn't have much money. No one in their neighborhood had any money. If you had money, you would live in a different neighborhood. Although now everything has changed. He has already walked through his old familiar places. He wasn't worried about being identified. He looked different enough to be recognized by someone who really knew him. Anyone who knew him well would not have given him away. Times and values are changing, but snitching in this part of the city, to put it mildly, was not encouraged. Especially bringing trouble on a local guy. Especially at him. There was no stone yet, at least not on his mother's grave. She recently passed away, recently buried so that the stone could be installed. He was wondering who was doing this. He planned to drop by a couple of old friends and discuss it with them. We must make sure that there is a suitable monument for her. She deserved it. She wasn't anyone special. She was just one of a nameless, faceless wave of humanity that came into the world and left it, seemingly without causing any significant changes. She deserved something good, something that people could see in 50 years. Something that would shout to the whole world that her life mattered, that the happy accident of life had not been wasted on her. He saw that her grave was being tended. She was respected in the neighborhood. People knew she had a hard time when she lost her husband. Later, the death of her grandson. The furor around the end of his marriage, the marriage of her son. She had a harder time than most, and she didn't complain, didn't seek sympathy or special treatment. I just kept going forward, kept a kind word for the people I talked to. He carefully placed his flowers among the other flowers that were there. Those flowers didn't look particularly old. Someone was looking after her grave. He squatted down. He wanted to tell her something. To find the words, the right words, that would let her know that she was important to him. That neither time nor distance had diminished his love for her. That he was sorry that everything turned out the way it did. He snorted. What words could do that? She was dead. She didn't care. She didn't care. There were no words that could reach her. The right words were for him, not for her. He grinned and stood up. A faint moan as he stood up. He was in good shape, but part of the age is moaning when you sit down or get up. Feeling the body protesting against this movement. I was wondering how long it would take you. I was a little surprised that you didn't come to the funeral. He turned quickly at the sound of her voice. Don't worry, I'm alone. There's no one with me. He looked at her. It was the first time he had seen her in the flesh since he had entered the villa back then and started his revenge. She looked good. She was a beautiful woman, always had been, but it seems that her beauty has grown. Perhaps he hasn't seen her for so long. Slim, despite the 2 children she gave birth to, the years had been kind to her. It can be seen that the wrinkles on the face became deeper, the skin looked softer. The smoothness of youth is gradually disappearing. But she stood straight and still maintained her composure, a beauty that pierced his chest when he looked at her. Talk to me, Terry. He took a deep breath. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. His throat was suddenly dry, and his mouth felt as if he had swallowed ashes. You look great, Dawn. I forgot how beautiful you are. It was hard to say those words. He could feel tears prickling at the corners of his eyes as he looked at her. It's a pity that my beauty is only external. Isn't it? He shrugged his shoulders. I'm saying what I see. You've always liked the way I look. That's right. I'm standing here. Nothing seems to have changed. I'm still looking at you. The words stuck in his throat. He fell silent, staring at the ground, trying to regain his composure. Embarrassed by his weakness, she came closer to him. I'm sorry, Terry. I knew you loved me. I always knew that you loved me. She took his hand. There's a bench over there. Let's sit down and talk. He didn't say anything when she led him to a wooden bench and they sat down. It's a wonderful tree, she said. You tree. It is very common in cemeteries. Do you know why, Terry? He shook his head. This is an old tree, one of the longest lived. Oaks, big, mighty trees, bigger and more majestic than the humble yew tree. 300 years to grow up, 300 to mature, and 300 to die. That's what they say about oaks. But yews grow slowly. They usually don't get as big or dominate the landscape in the same way as the oaks, but they just keep growing. In some cases, thousands of years. They will survive the competition. They accept what life throws at them and endure. Your mother taught me this place. She liked to sit here when she came to visit your father. In recent years, I've gotten into the habit of coming with her. She told me about how they used to plant yews in sacred places, and because these places were protected, yews could live a full life without fear that they would be cut down to make ships, houses, or weapons. He turned to her, frowning. You didn't know? I'm sorry. She paused, thinking. I moved in with her after what happened. We've always gotten along well. She always treated me like a daughter, not like a daughter-in-law. After what happened, I wanted to fix everything. I couldn't change what I had done. I knew that my actions had caused her a lot of pain. She looked down at her feet. She missed you, Terry. I know you called her when you could. She lived for those calls. One of the things that made her happy. When she heard your voice, I saw her light up. She was sad after the call, but she loved hearing your voice. She was worried about you all the time. Where have you been? What have you been doing? Will they catch you? Well, now you have me in your hands. What an irony of fate, isn't it? The great fugitive was caught visiting his mother's grave. A kind of cliché. He could hear the bitterness in his tone. I'm not going to call anyone. You can get up and leave anytime you want. She was trying to say something and looked around with disappointment as the words wouldn't come out. He sat watching her, giving her space. I'm sorry, Terry, damn sorry. My stupidity, my selfishness, my thoughtlessness have hurt so many people. So many people have been hurt. You weren't the only one who screwed up, Dawn. No one came out of this whole fucking mess looking good. You, me, Ruthie, Darius, Marcel, none of us were a good guy. Each of us could have done something different. Each of us had the power to stop it. I don't know. It wasn't just up to you. She was crying. He saw tears falling and dripping on her feet, leaving a wet spot on the trousers. A continuous rain of tears. Her shoulders were shaking. Not much, but he could see it. He reached out and put his hand on her shoulder, moving so that they were sitting next to each other. She clung to him and cried even harder. He put his other arm around her and sat down, hugging her to him. He could smell the shampoo she was using to wash her hair. Faint, but the scent remained. He noticed the gray in the roots of her blonde hair. It took her a few minutes to calm down. She pulled a small handkerchief from the sleeve of her coat and dabbed at her eyes before putting it back. Thank you. He moved slightly away from her, and she settled down on the bench. They both looked out. The bench stood under a large yew tree, too wide for a person, even a basketball player, to wrap his arms around. It was located at the top of a small slope. Further down the slope, there was a small church that was responsible for the cemetery. Below, in the direction they were looking, was the city, and in the distance was the bend of the River Thames as it left the capital and turned into an estuary rather than a river. Your mother came here almost every day to make sure your father's grave looks good and to spend some time just thinking. I didn't go with her every day, probably most of the time, but not every day. I like the time, rain or shine, to sit and think. That's not like you. You were always busy. You kept moving. I know. Maybe if I'd thought a little more. Stop it, Dawn. She turned her head at his harsh tone. You can beat yourself up forever. We all can. This is one of those things that are inherent in man. We do our best to overcome ourselves, to imagine something that never was and never will be. I've ruined a lot of lives. The people I loved. Bad things happen. She turned to face him. He saw her frown. He heard the anger in her words. How can you say that? It's easy. Easy as pie, Dawn. If you knew what was going to happen, would you have played with this jerk? He shook his head. This is a rhetorical question. Of course you wouldn't do that. You didn't think for a second that it would happen the way it did. It could have played out in a million different ways. You could have gotten pregnant, or it could have been a one-time thing and I would never have known. You could have started and then stopped because of guilt. A lot of different things could have happened. Any of them could have happened. You had to play your part in what happened. Each of us had our own roles. But my role… Yes, you set it all in motion. But the seeds have already been sown. It happened for a reason, out of the blue. It was a sequence of events. Let's say, for example, that instead of you visiting Ruthie alone, I would have gone with you. I would give up my quiet and peaceful weekends and go with you to visit our daughter. Something feasible, something simple, something that could very well happen. I would have met Marcel. He wouldn't have introduced you to Darius. Or maybe he would have introduced you anyway. Maybe Darius would have been at the wedding, met you there and seduced you. Who knows? He looked at her. He stared into the depths of her cornflower blue eyes. Look at me, Dawn. It's not just your fault. All of us, each of us, were included. You have to take responsibility for your role in this, and let's be honest, you did a mean thing by cheating on me. But it's not just your fault. I have my share of the blame to take on myself. She looked away. He could read her disappointment. Be a martyr if you want to be, Dawn. I'm just saying that you don't have to be her. It happened. It changed lives. We were all part of it. But how it will happen depends on us. You don't have to beat yourself up forever. Move on. Leave it in the past. It's over. It's not that simple. Not for me. I have to take responsibility. No. I admit my involvement. I admit that I could do something to change our relationship so that you don't want to look for excitement outside of our marriage. None of this concerns you. It's about me and what I could do. I was involved. My actions could have led to a completely different development of events. For example, you could be married to Darius and lead a social life. He heard a snort and looked at her. Of all the possible futures, Terry, marriage wasn't one of them. She looked at him and saw a playful smile on his face. She smiled. Oh, he could use it, and he used it. But otherwise he was a tool. A pony with one trick. She stopped, thinking for a moment. He was good in bed, Terry. But the difference between you and him wasn't that big. You did it with love. He did it with passion. He was bigger. You had better stamina. He had the power. You had the technique. So why is that? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The fact is that I know the answer to this question. I've thought about it so damn much that I know the answer. Because I could. Because I wanted to. I like that he wanted me. When we met, I saw in his eyes that all he wanted was to use me. To force me. To drive me into sweaty submission. Nice. It won't be easy to get these images out of your head. She grinned. You idiot. He was exciting, unlike you. He was big, black, and damn sure of himself. He made me sweat just seeing him. She looked at Terry, and he shrugged. She reached out and lifted his head so that he looked into her eyes. He didn't love me. He didn't build a house for me, didn't raise a family for me. He didn't work hard. He didn't make sacrifices. He didn't put up with my bad mood, my disappointments. You did all this and more, much more, and then you put me to bed and made me feel good. He just did the easy part, and like I said, the gap between him and you wasn't that big at all. I've never stopped loving you. I still haven't stopped. He wasn't a threat to us. He was just fun on the side. A little bit of well-being. Something superfluous that I had. I wasn't going to leave you. Not for a moment. I didn't know that. You pushed me away. The game, Terry. It was a fucking game. It made what I had with Darius a little sharper. You didn't do without it, did you? Both laughed at her comments and dramatic performance. I couldn't do without it. But it hurt when you pushed me away. Not as much as it hurt Darius when you interrupted him. Terry laughed and shook his head. He was passed out. I didn't feel anything. Were you that kind? Yes, I became soft in my old age. I'm really sorry. I didn't think how I'd feel when I cut you off. I didn't think you'd understand what I was doing. It was a game for me. Joke. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about anyone else. Like I said, I was pretty damn shallow. Stop it. Terry took a deep breath of the evening air, replaying their conversation in my mind. How did Mom die? Dawn's head turned quickly. I thought we were talking about what happened between us. That's right. But there are other things I would like to know about. I'm sorry. Stop saying that. She had a blood clot in her stomach. He blocked an artery. Didn't you know? Terry shook his head. I didn't find out about her death until a few weeks later. I was going to call her, but someone else answered, and they told me. They knew she was dead, and they told me about her funeral and how it went. But they didn't know. They weren't sure why she died. She was fine, and then she seemed to go downhill all of a sudden. One day, she barely even got out of bed, very weak and sluggish. I called an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital. She died before they realized what it was. We only found out about it later. Damn it. She didn't suffer, Terry. It was quick and painless. It is often worse. His mother did not like hospitals. She ate well, exercised regularly, and looked after herself. She wrote you a letter. What she wanted to tell you. I'll come by sometime. Please do it. Now that she's gone, this is probably your home. Stay there. I don't want that. You live there. Stay there. Thanks. I was thinking about moving in with Ruthie, but if I can stay there, I probably will. Your choice. I was really wondering where you'd go after all this came out. Yes, some fool burned down my house. Terry laughed at the fake outrage in her voice. Yes, about that. Sorry. She turned around and hit him on the arm. You idiot. You weren't sorry. No, you're right. I wasn't sorry. I was angry. Well, I said it out loud. I was angry. I was angry. Really? Pretty girl. I think I'm playing Richard Gere pretty well. He smiled when she laughed at his words. Yes, you are Richard Gere. Only in your dreams. He chuckled. I was angry, and I decided what I was going to do, and having a house didn't matter. It seemed like a good way to hurt you. Unlike that damn email and cutting up my lover? Okay, it wasn't the worst thing I did, but honestly, it was part of the catharsis. Catharsis? Yes, it made me feel better doing it. It was like I was drawing a line. That part of my life is over. Our marriage went up in smoke, and with it our house. See? It kind of works. Yes, it works great. Thanks for that. I'm glad it made you feel a little better. I'm not sorry, Dawn. I did what I did. She put her hand on his shoulder. It's over. It doesn't matter. You're right about that. At that time, it was another blow. We returned from America after all this fuss, questions, and proceedings, and here it is, my house burned down. That was what I kind of intended. Well, it worked. The insurance was not paid because it was done intentionally. Eventually, some developer bought the site. I think there are a couple of houses there now. Will I give you your share if that's what you want? Terry shook his head. I have enough money to get by. A thought occurred to him. Do I owe you anything for handling the funeral? No. She had an insurance policy covering all the bills. A monument is also included there. It's paid for. Yes, the text chosen for the monument, but I can probably change it if you want. She stopped talking. No, as long as it's respectful, I really don't care. I'm sure I'll see it one day. Give me a reason to come back. Are you going to come back? I'm a fugitive, Dawn. A wanted man. I do not know if your lover has set the reward he promised for me, but the police would prefer to talk to me a couple of times. I'm sorry, it was stupid of me. Was it difficult to escape? He shook his head. No, I did it on purpose when you were in the States. 2 black guys cheat and get punished by their husband for this betrayal. The cops didn't give a damn. There weren't any locals there. It's a tourist spot. Racial problems, problems with cheating wives. You saw the reaction in the media, half condemned me, half wanted to buy me a beer. But to answer the question, yes, I will move on. I don't think they're actively looking for me. But the sooner I leave the country, the happier I will be. It feels like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time while I'm here. Where are you going? I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have asked. For God's sake. The problem is that I do not know. How can you not know where you're going? This is my life now. That's how I live. It's terrible. Terry shook his head. No, that's what I want. This is probably what I've always wanted. Just to wander around the earth. What do you mean? Do you remember Kung Fu? A 70s TV series? A little ahead of my time. Yeah, smartass. In my time, too, but it was repeated in the 80s and 90s. A Shaolin monk in the Wild West who corrected mistakes with the help of Kung Fu. David Carradine, or something like that. Vaguely. This is my life. Only without Kung Fu and without discrimination of mistakes. I go wherever I want. If I want to go somewhere, I go. I'm just taking my time, putting one foot in front of the other, carefully and slowly. I'm not in a hurry. I'm just enjoying where I am. Where do you live? I don't know. Everywhere and nowhere. Wherever I go. What? Do you stay in hotels? He shook his head. It's a damn rare occurrence. I can stay with friends more often or set up camp. I bought a boat and lived on it for a couple of years, traveling on river networks. I lived in a Buddhist monastery for a little over a year. You? A Buddhist? Have you shaved your head? A wise one? It's been 10 years, and after everything we've been through, you're still the most sarcastic person I know. I just had an image of you in my head, dressed in an orange robe, sitting under a tree. I really can't imagine a bald head. Terry laughed. Well, it happened. About a year and a half in South India. I planned to stay the night and stayed much longer. Why? I was struggling with my feelings, especially with anger. I was very, very angry. I was angry at you for what you did, angry at myself for my answer. I was angry at how things turned out, angry at the whole damn world. I only have one life, and what a fucking mess I've made of it. Were they able to help? It took time, honestly, and a damn ton of work. I left a couple of times, but they brought me to where I am now, and I am happy. You look good. Lots of exercise, healthy eating, and lots of meditation. I'm outside all day, whether it's raining or sunny. It's not difficult at all. It's pretty simple. Yes, I was shitting in the bushes. I slept in hedges, under trees. I was very cold, very scared. I was robbed. Terry, I'm living my life, Dawn. I'm not sitting at the table. I am not locked in the house. I do not do household chores. I don't communicate with people who don't want to be with me. I'm doing what Jack Reacher's character does in those cheap books. I'm walking. I'm dealing with what's in front of me, and I'm not worried. Well, maybe a little. It doesn't feel like life. You couldn't be more wrong. I see the sunrise and sunset almost every day. Sometimes I feel pain. I feel good after eating. I eat when I'm hungry and sleep when I'm tired. I'm living a life. I don't beat around the bush in some detached daydreams. I almost ran into 10 people today. They were so busy with their damn phones that they almost bumped into me. What the hell? At least I'm here. I know what's going on around me. I met incredible people and ate wonderful food. Food I've never even heard of. Any women? The question was asked in a low voice. Terry turned to look at her and nodded his head. Sometimes. Not much. More than a threesome. I'm not as good looking as your Darius. But I had company here and there for a couple of evenings. Don't humiliate yourself. You're a much bigger man than he ever was. There is, but there was not. Dawn glanced at him quickly. I was. Didn't you know? Knew what? He is. He struggled after what happened. He probably couldn't handle people's reactions, what you did to him, but mostly with the way people treated him. He hated that they knew what you had done to him, robbed him of his manhood. About a year or so later, he committed suicide. I'm sorry, Dawn. Don't think about me. Don't apologize to me. The day we returned to the room and realized what had happened. What a day. We had a great time at the spa, Ruthie and I, laughing, gossiping. I returned to the room, and our world collapsed. She looked down at the worn earth at her feet. She paused for a moment before continuing. We entered in seventh heaven. I do not know if it was the smell, or the silence, or something else, but we realized as soon as we opened the door that something was wrong. They were barely alive when we found them. I went with him to the hospital and made sure he was receiving treatment. Then the police and the authorities took us away. It was a real three-ring circus for a few weeks, and then we returned home. I never saw him again after that. Sorry, I'm lying. I saw him once, about a month before he committed suicide. He reached out to me, wanted to talk. We had dinner together, and that was the last time I talked to him. I kind of thought that after you dumped me, after I saw the tattoo, you'd stay with him. Did you really think I was going to leave you? Terry nodded. You had his tattoo on you. You didn't make love to me. I saw his photos. I couldn't compete with him in terms of appearance. He was younger than me, much fitter, and he had money. He was superior to me in every possible way. For several weeks before the holiday, I was afraid of every conversation with you, because I thought that in each of them you would walk out the door and leave me. Terry, I'm me. Excuse me? Yes, I know. It was a bad period in my life. I've never thought about it. Damn it, it must have been terrible. I loved you. Really, really loved you. I know I didn't behave like that, but I loved you. The thought of leaving you never crossed my mind. I wanted both of you. I knew you wouldn't share me. That's why it was hidden from you. But never did I want to end what we had. Then why? Why? Because I could. As I said, I had the best of both worlds. I didn't think you'd understand. What would you do? Ruthie didn't say anything. I wasn't going to admit it. You've never met Marcel or Darius. You didn't go to see Ruthie at the university. How would you find out? Stupid, stupid woman. I didn't think, didn't stop, and didn't think it through. Just a brief excuse. Dumb, dumb, dumb. Dawn, it's in the past. I know, but when I think about what I did, the people I hurt, and they were the people I loved. It wasn't like I was hurting strangers. I was hurting the people closest to me. The job is done, and it cannot be undone. What you can do is move on and think about who you want to be. But you need to move on. You sound like my therapist. I feel like your therapist. They laughed at his quick response. Seriously, do you need any help? Dawn nodded. She looked at the backs of her hands, at the veins, at the hairs. I've been getting help since it happened. A little understanding of why, a little bit about how to deal with trauma. Something, as you said, about coming to terms with what happened and moving on. Good. Don't you hate me? Terry laughed. No, of course I don't know. At first it was incredibly painful for me. I felt rejected. I got angry, and there were times when I hated you. But over the years, my feelings have softened, changed. This conversation will excite them again. In the future, when I think about you, my feelings will continue to change. I'm glad you don't hate me. I was afraid of that. But I think there were times when I hated you for what you did. I can't believe it. My reaction was, how should I say it, somewhat extreme. An understatement. Extreme is a good word. Do you understand that? Do you understand? Yes. Dawn looked at him blankly. There is something, but I don't quite understand it. Terry smiled. I didn't know if you could handle it. Do you remember Phil Newman? Yes, vaguely. The team leader you talked to? This is the one. Remember his story about a child's toy? He watched as understanding appeared in her eyes. He nodded and smiled at her. He was a proud father. He really took care of his child, did everything for him, and I remember when Ruthie was born, talking to him about how to be a father. We talked about it a lot. I wanted to be a good father, and he was who I thought he was. I remember asking him about discipline and how he achieved it. Dawn held up a finger, stopping Terry. Let's see if this is the same story. He told you about how he stepped on one of his son's favorite toys when he was behaving badly. That's exactly it. He insulted his grandmother, Phil's mother-in-law, and did not apologize. I knew he was wrong, but there was something like "fuck you" in his attitude. I remember this story. Phil said, "Take your favorite toy." It was a plastic toy. Transformer. Metal and plastic. That's right. The kid brought a toy. Dad looks at him, puts it on the floor and stomps his work boot. It smashes to pieces in front of a child, without warning, without alterations. There is no second chance. Phil told it better. He said it was traumatic. The child's reaction was overwhelming, but he never, ever doubted Phil again. And he never offended his grandmother. Here it is. I got it, you stepped on my toy. He blew the fool to pieces and left it for you to find. You knew I did it. I wasn't hiding. I left you my ring to make sure you knew. Trampled it, crushed it, and left you to pick up the pieces. Literally. Literally and figuratively. Before that, one evening I was sitting at work and thinking about how I could cope with what you were doing. It was painful and bad for me. I was deciding what to do and how I would like to see my life. I remembered Phil and bam, I got my answer. Smash your toy. So, I broke it so you couldn't play with it anymore, and then I gave it back to you. Phil's son learned the same lesson, which was funny. Now I'm thinking about talking to Phil. I remember telling Phil that he was damn cruel at what he did, and he agreed. He said it was one of the most difficult things he had ever done. He knew how much it would hurt his boy, but it was the right thing to do. Taught him a valuable lesson. Doing this with your toys was the hardest thing I've ever done. He could see her sitting there, struggling to digest what he had told her. He patted his pockets and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. He offered them to her, and she made a face. He lit a cigarette and took a deep breath. I didn't think you smoked. I didn't smoke for you because you hated it. I still don't like it. A bad-smelling habit. And it's killing you. She shook her head. Drop it, please. As if you care. I care. I know I did a very bad job of showing it, but I loved you. I still love you. Yes? Yes, Terry. Yes. I still love you. I do not know if you know, but we are still married. Only because you can't find me to give me the divorce paper. No. If that were the case, in 7 years I could officially declare you dead and end the marriage. I don't want a divorce. No? What do you want us to be together again? He laughed. No. I don't think that, given everything that has happened, we will succeed. Do you think so? She looked at him and saw a smile on his face. Listen, you stupid bastard. Just because we're not together doesn't mean I don't think about you. I still love you. I miss you madly. I'm still your wife because I want to be. Not because I have to be, but because I want to be a wife. I talk to you every day. It's stupid. Marriage is for life. I screwed up. I ruined our marriage. It was my mistake. I know we're not a couple, but I still want to keep this connection with you, and I won't be the one to break it. Don't be silly, Dawn. You're still young and beautiful. Don't give up. Find a good man and become the perfect wife for him. Your first marriage may not have worked out well, but you only have one life. Make yourself happy, no matter what happened. You don't deserve to be sad and lonely. Nothing can be changed. There is no second chance. There is no return. I've never been with anyone else. It's just you and Darius since we got married. Don't act like a martyr, Dawn. You can have a long and happy marriage. Maybe without kids, but a damn happy life. I'm not pretending to be a martyr. I'm happy with my life. I have my regrets, and there are things that could be better, but I'm not unhappy. I don't need another man. If you want a divorce, I'll sign the papers for you. Do you want to get a divorce? He shook his head. No. I wish things were better between us. We have a good story, and the way we broke up really sets off a lot of the good things that happened before. For me, this conversation is the beginning of awakening those pleasant memories. She glanced at him quickly. Do you think we have pleasant memories? Hell yes. I loved being your husband. Well, almost to the very end. I was damn proud to be your man, Ruthie's father. I'm glad, Terry. We're back there. Okay? I don't hate you. I don't want you to think badly of us. What happened happened. Remember the good times. He smiled back at her faintly. He stubbed out his cigarette butt and flicked it aside. Do you smoke a lot? Most of the time, no. Sometimes I tend to indulge my weaknesses. Give up and then start again. Give up again. Unpleasant. Life is a discomfort. Exactly as the Buddha said. Do you believe in all this? To a large extent. I don't believe in the religious side, but I do believe in philosophy. The conversation turned into silence, and they sat looking into the distance, thinking about the different things that have been said. So you haven't had love since? I haven't met anyone I'd like to make love to. Wow. I know. If you had told me before I left for Florida that I wouldn't make love for another 10 years, I do not know what I would do. I would probably have half-killed Darius with my lust. Dawn laughed. Terry looked at the genuine amusement on her face. I miss you, Terry. I miss you very much. I think that's the hardest part of it all. You've always been behind my back. The realization of this gave me confidence. I miss it. Just to talk to you if possible. He shrugged his shoulders. I understand. But I don't want you to think that I hate you or, worse, that I don't care. I want you to know that you are loved, appreciated, and missed. Thanks. They were sitting there, and Dawn reached out, taking Terry's hand in hers. She squeezed him gently as they sat like that, enjoying the silence. The sound of the last birds settling down for the night. A motorcycle, audible in the distance. How are your parents? They're alive. We don't really have much in common with each other. My email? Yeah. Darius was black, and they didn't like it. A lot has been said. We talk from time to time, but our relationship is tenuous at best. You've never been close. No, no, they weren't. Terry looked around the cemetery. It's hard to get rid of this habit. He had never had to run away to avoid capture. But that didn't mean he stopped keeping his eyes open. He got out of trouble several times, being alert, aware of what was going on. He was sitting here now. Everything looked good. His spider sense wasn't tingling. Are you interested in learning about Ruthie? He took a deep breath. The hardest thing for him was her betrayal. She was his blood, his family, his daughter, and it was she who brought her mother together with her lover. It was something he still couldn't come to terms with. How is she? Dawn looked at him intently. He could see her gaze. She's in a good place. She and Marcel. Did they stay together? The disbelief in his voice was clear. They're a good couple. They've always been like that. I'm upset that you've never seen them together. They really care about each other. I would love to see them, but I was never invited to meet her boyfriend. She was worried that you wouldn't like him. Because I'm her father? Or because he's black? A little bit of both. Because of the color, she didn't want to bring him to your house. He's black. So what? It's not just that. There is a difference between being with a black man and a white man. Don't make faces. I was with both of them. I know the difference, and so does she. It's not just that you would see his color, but also that black men talk differently to women. Terry didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. I think the way he talked to her would have hurt you. Self-confidence, treating women like property. I think he knew it too, as did Ruth. She wanted you to meet, really wanted you to approve of him. She took him seriously. Getting him to set you up with one of his buddies was a really damn stupid way to handle this situation. She understands. He understands. I understand. It doesn't change anything. Since then, he has grown up seriously. He had to do it. Just like her. Good. Wow. There is no forgiveness. Terry exhaled loudly. What do you want me to say, Dawn? That I agree with what she did? I cannot. I'm still mad at her. I understand that. She screwed up. But what I did was even worse. She saw him shaking his head and continued to insist. Hell's teeth, Terry. I was your damn wife. The woman you loved. I was the one who stood by your side and swore to remain faithful. To love, to respect, to obey. Whatever the damn words are. I swore an oath. I betrayed you. Yes, you did it. Your betrayal really hurt. It hurt. It hurts a lot. It still hurts. But what she did was worse, or maybe not worse, but it was harder for me to deal with it. She was my daughter, my own flesh and blood. I raised her. I gave her everything I could. I didn't ask much of her, but to go and set her mother up with a lover. Damn it. I asked for it. I was the one who acted during the performance. I was the one who crossed the line. Yes, I won't let you off the hook. You have something you're responsible for, but if she'd done the right thing, this wouldn't have happened. All she had to do was say no, or tell me, warn me. But she didn't do it. She liked that you were doing it. I was her father, and she liked that you were cheating on me. She made fun of my marriage. You should talk to her. Why? Terry heard the contempt in his own voice. The heat he felt at that surprised him. Because she understands it. Better than me. She knows how much she screwed up. So is Marcel. They helped me a lot to deal with what I had done. She's in the same position I was in before. First of all, you need to admit your mistake out loud. I do not know what I would say to her. I told them. I have nothing to say to Marcel. You need to talk to both of them. They are a couple. Divide and conquer doesn't work. He won't want to see me. Think about what I did to him. It was like a bad Tarantino movie. Excessively. Yes, a little too much. But I'm not a psychopath. I know you've been tested. Remember, dumbass, I was the one who asked you to do this test. You sound like a middle-aged Sheldon Cooper. Who? A television character. Don't worry. TVs, I think. It's not really a part of my world. Marcel will see you. They'll both do it. You may have nothing to tell them, but they have a lot to tell you. I'll bet. I was pretty strong in my disapproval of their actions. I would assume that they want to recoup. Your imagination is deceptive. They want to fix everything. To give you a chance to meet your grandchildren. I'm sorry, Dawn, but I assure you that Marcel is not the father of the children. Did you really cut them out? Yeah, one of my strongest protests against their behavior. Wow, I just tried my best to believe it. I've seen the list of things you've done. Darius told me. He only found out something after he came to his senses in the hospital. Let's see. Wasn't that enough? There was something else that I planned to do, but as time went on, I found that my enthusiasm was waning. Did you have anything else planned? I didn't urinate on them. It was something I definitely planned. Let's hope they appreciate your generous and forgiving nature. Terry laughed, and she joined him. Seriously, Terry, they love the chance to talk to you. Yes, with your feet on my head. No, talk to them on the phone. I'll give you their number. Talk to them, see what they say. I think you'll be glad you did it. No tricks. Considering what you said and how you said it about what Ruthie did, I think you need to talk to her about something. I think that at the end of this conversation, your feelings will change. I'll think about it. Please do it. Not for me, not really for them. This is for you. I hear that her betrayal hurt the most. Give me their number and I'll think about it. No promises. Okay? Good. Thank you. Give me your phone and I'll enter their number. And mine too. I'm sorry, baby. You'll need to write it down. I'm a Luddite, remember? There is no phone. How did you call your mom? From phones when I could find them. Most villages have them. It's expensive, but it's worth it. Damn it. You're not making it easy for yourself, are you? I'm not looking for easy ways. I don't want that. I want to feel pain and difficulties. Feel tired and in pain. I want to be alive. Before that, I spent years being petted, and I don't want to go back. Working at a desk on a computer, no thanks. Sleeping in such a comfortable bed that kings and queens couldn't afford such a luxury and yet never appreciate it? No, to hell with it. Do you remember when you were a child? When you were little and you were just running away. Run and run as fast as you can until you can't run anymore, until you're gasping for air, almost sick from the strain. It was that you were alive. When was the last time you felt this? When was the last time you lived? He stopped. He wasn't trying to sell his lifestyle. It didn't matter what she thought or what others thought. It was his life, his only life, and he would live it the way he wanted, and on his own terms. Do you wear a hair shirt? Her voice was low, but her question pierced through him. Use me, Dawn. If anyone deserves to suffer a little, it's me. Yes, part of my life is that I punish myself for what I've done. Not just this couple of idiots, but you and Ruthie too. To my mom, our friends and families. To the doctors who treated these clowns. To the fans of the football club for which Marseille could not play. For what I did when I was a kid. How long are you going to do this? Every day. Every day for the rest of my life. Dawn, this may sound rude to you, but it's not really true, at least not to me. I'm a tough nut to crack. I'm used to it. Any pain I feel just makes me appreciate that I'm alive. Physical or emotional pain. I can feel them because I'm here and I'm alive. Many other people can't say the same thing. This rough dream means that I wish good night at sunset and good morning to sunrise. And I've seen sunrises and sunsets that would make you cry. I've seen stunning beauty and real hardship. I laughed and cried. I'm a lucky guy. I always thought I was lucky to marry you. That you were in my life. And then when Kevin and Ruthie showed up, I couldn't believe my luck. He shook his head. He took her hand and kissed the back of it. You hurt me, but you also penetrated my cocoon, which I surrounded myself and my life with. You tore me apart, but I felt something. Anger, rage, humiliation, loss, many different emotions. I felt alive. I was reminded that I don't exist as a character in a book or some damn soap opera, but as a living, breathing person. You've given me incredible highs and terrible lows. I don't hate you. Damn it, I still love you and dream about your ass. Don't feel sorry for me, Dawn. I don't want it, and I don't deserve it. Dawn leaned towards him, and he hugged her. Hugging her, I felt her crying again. He kissed the top of her head, a gentle kiss. He felt her clinging to him and felt himself responding to her touch. She leaned back to look at his face. He saw the question in her eyes, wet with tears, and nodded. For one night, I want to get a good look at that damn tattoo. She laughed. Idiot, as soon as I got back, I redid everything. You have to see this. I think you'll approve. I want to see it. Dawn dusted herself off and, holding Terry's hand, The two of them walked out of the cemetery. In the morning at dawn, pick up the letter tonight, we'll have breakfast tomorrow, and I'll give you the phone numbers, mine and Ruthie's. For one night. For one night, but I want you to promise that you will call from time to time. He nodded. I can do it. I like talking to my mom. It helped me feel connected. So now there will be a connection with me. I love you, and if anything happens, I'll make sure you're brought home again. For one night. It's for one night this time, but you'll be back, and we could spend another night. For one night. The performance is a team performance. The number of tickets is limited.